give me uh a an understanding of who you are, what you do. Doesn't need to be real in detail, but I'm curious myself as to your primary business. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so um, first of all, we started Blazing Gun Dogs many years ago over a dog named Blaze. So that's where the name came from. We trained a really nice dog, and it was a rescue dog. Um, and I was just getting into hunting, and everybody loved that dog, and they wanted to know, who trained it or where the dog was from, and I couldn't tell you anything about the dog. I rescued him. I'm not even sure if he was a full blood lab, but he was a really good hunting dog.
Sure.
And we were guiding hunts as a kid, and everybody got to see that dog. He was exposed to a lot of birds, and it just kind of opened a window for me that people wanted dogs like that. And my history with animals, just growing up with dogs, led into basically starting to train, not for people, just for myself. And
Yeah. When was that?
and man, that was 2012.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. So um, my mom was always cool with me bringing dogs home. So I would literally be driving down the road and see a dog and pick it up and take it home when I was a kid, 15, 16. And, my love for pets just went through the roof. So honestly, when it comes to pets, I love all dogs. And I see that all dogs could have some type of potential for who they are, not necessarily what what the purpose is,
Yeah.
but each dog can be trained in some sort of fashion for who the person or who the client is. But when I got into the pets, it was more of just for me and having dogs at the house. It was a lot of fun. And then I got into the retriever side of things, and then it kind of just really took off after that. So um, I started working for a lady that had conformation show dogs, and I was kind of her kennel assistant, and I was training her dogs, and she would take them to shows, and then she wanted to show their working side of stuff. And that was honestly a terrible job and very hard to do. Those dogs were so hard to train. Um, Once we got into the working side of that, I realized that those dogs were not really bred for working. They were bred
What kind of
for
dogs were they?
conformations. They were just big English labs.
Okay.
You're
Where
like
was that
100
at? In
pound.
Texas?
Yeah, that was in Athens, Texas. And
Okay.
she was real big in the show side of stuff. She had
Yeah.
horses, had dogs. They were fun to be around, but they had zero working drive.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I kind of want to I want to get into labs for hunting, and these guys, they don't really, I mean, you can throw a bird in front of them, they don't care. They don't really care to work hard, unless it's a ball or maybe a cheese stick or something.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really what was driving me to want to, pursue my passion for dogs, because these dogs had zero work ethic, and that's not what turned me on for dogs. I mean, I wanted dogs that loved doing their job.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of gets further into,
So when was
you
that?
know,
You
that
started
was
shooting gun dogs in 2012?
yeah, yeah,
So was that was prior to that?
yeah, yeah, that was prior to that. And then it just kind of, man, it just took off after that. There's so many backstories with me and animals that I realized that it is what I want to do in life. I had a good career. I had everything I needed for a job. Like, I didn't need to leave my career to train dogs, but it's what I wanted to do. But when
What were you doing before dogs?
I was in the natural gas industry, I built oil and gas refineries and did
Okay.
startups and stuff like that. And I did it for 10 years. So while I was building the dog business, I was also working I had two jobs. I think a lot of us trainers have two jobs at the time, and they try to get their dog business going. But I did it for about 10 years. So I slowly built the kennel. It wasn't just wake up overnight and throw a kennel together. We slowly built the operation while I was working with the gas company. I was using all those funds to dump back into the kennel and
So was
it,
that
you know,
pre-2012 or was that when we like how
uh,
old are you?
35.
Okay. Okay. You're yeah,
Yeah.
you're not I mean, we're not that far apart. I got a birthday tomorrow. I'm gonna be 44, but I look at decades, man. Like the older you get,
Yeah, go off
decades really not that
decades.
much. Like it'll go pretty
Yeah, so I mean, it goes way, way back, and the more and more I look at it, the more years that I've been doing this. Um, we didn't. So we came up with this name for the gun dog kennel, but we didn't establish a name until 2017. Like we actually made it a business in 17. So
okay.
2012, it was just a business we named after a dog, and I thought it was cool, and I love that dog. And
And you were doing the
as
gas thing
he,
then.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, I left the gas industry 4 years ago.
Okay.
So that's probably why people have seen more of me. And then we go back to the Instagram thing. I was using Instagram for a free platform to just push the business and go with it,
Sure.
and just being as honest as I can on that platform and showing people what we have and who we are.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's helped us 100%. I mean, we're just
Totally.
putting ourselves out there and letting people
Yeah.
say and do what they want, and just, ignoring the bad and picking up on the good stuff. So,
Sure. Sure.
but man, we have a lot of history in dogs, and I think that's a whole nother topic, honestly. We could talk a long time. We have tons of history, as far as I can remember in dogs. So,
So
but
so GunDogs, so you were with a gal that was doing show dogs. You realized, this isn't my thing, and they're not really built for what I want to do.
yeah,
The hunting part was what you wanted to be focused on. And then you kind of started doing it moonlighting while you were working. Were you doing the construction part or were you doing the actual like gas part? Like,
both,
were
both.
you getting getting, I know nothing about gas. You're gonna learn
Yeah.
really quick. Like when you were you like doing the
So,
drilling and that kind of stuff, or were you doing like building plants?
no, so I was on the treating side of it. So we were building the plants and then operating. So I had a lot of time where I was out in the field, and I was just taking dogs to work with me.
Okay.
You know, I'd
Yeah.
have one or two dogs with me at the office. I was really lucky, and I guess hard work. I got that job when I was 19, I believe, and just kind of moved up with that company.
Yeah.
Each year, I think I accomplished more and more, but had a really cool boss, and he would let me bring my dogs to work. And this was in a small Texas town, East Texas town. So it's just kind of like a family workplace. And
Yeah.
the
So
company
were these
grew
dogs
through the
yours?
years.
Were these dogs yours or were these client dogs? When did you start doing, were you training
Yeah, so they
dogs?
were. No, there's videos of me taking client dogs, like, into the gas plant and walking them around and stuff like
Sure.
that. I mean, I was taking client dogs to work, loading them up in the truck, and I think that's one reason I was producing, like, such good dogs for these clients. I mean, I'm talking maybe 2 or 3 dogs at the most years ago, but I made them as they were my dogs, they were my
Yeah.
pets. They would load
Yeah.
up in the truck, we would go to town, we would go to work. They were with me every day,
Yep.
and the aspect of building that bond and building the working side of it and then having the exposure is what built those dogs. I
Yeah.
mean, they had to have manners when they went to the plant. I mean, we're building, multi-million dollar gas plants, and I have a dog just hanging out in the control building with me.
Sure.
And the owner's like, "Hey, that dog's not gonna piss on my computer, is he?" You know, just
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it was um it was really cool. And truthfully, like, the gas business was never a business that I had planned to leave. It's just when I relocated our home closer to a facility that we were building, a big facility in the Houston, Texas area. And when I got here, it's a much larger part of Texas that where we came from. And I just started turning down a lot of business for hunting training and gun, like, puppies, and it got to the point where it made sense to take off with it. And if I think back, I think it was kind of during COVID when a lot of people started going home when the dog industry went just skyrocketed. The pet industry went up, to a multi-billion-dollar industry every year. And that's when I told my wife, I was like, it's time to actually do this, full time. It's
Yeah.
time to leave the company and do this full time.
So pretty, I
It was a
mean,
little scary.
pretty
So
recently. Like
yeah,
that's pretty sweet. So like I didn't know this part. And so this is actually really good because it's gonna some of the questions I have for you are probably related to some of the stuff you did early on with your dogs. Probably more early on with the dogs than maybe more recently, but that's what I'm curious about because
yeah,
I don't train, so now let's fast forward. Now you leave gas industry, you're full time. You like I feel like it's and I understand this balance too because I was in the same position when I started when I started our company. It was construction full time for me. This was total moonlight, like the products,
yeah,
developing the products and doing the patents on it was the shed thing to start out with. And then it was our Hodag, which is a different brand of ours for deer hunting stuff. But it was patenting that stuff at night and it was working on the development of that stuff at night. And it was totally, that was all secondary. And then it was taking so much time and money that finally I was like, oh man, I have to make a decision. Like I don't have enough hours to work two full-time jobs. So I had to
you can't, yeah,
so you had
and
to
be a dad. So
totally
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So I feel like there's a very similar, there's similarities there. And so when you go to the point where you go, man, I feel like there's the demand for it and I can switch it where I go, my primary income goes from gas to my primary income becomes the dogs. When you get to that point, walk me through that and explain to me that story, and then I'll have some questions about the differences or what has to change at that point when it comes to some of the training. But
yeah,
explain that part for me first.
man. So the goal, w- I was very lucky to make uh, good money coming up in the gas industry, and I always took all of that and I went and bought the best dog training stuff I could think of, like the best kennels, the best trailer, and I would either finance it short term, pay it off, however that worked. But I wanted everything done before the dog business took off, if that makes sense. Like I
Yep.
didn't want to be trying to go. I mean, today if you go buy one of my kennels, they're like $1,300 a piece. There's no. I don't see anybody starting a business of my size today without taking out like a $200,000 loan or something. It's ridiculous the way stuff costs now. But what happened was we were just matching the numbers. The income from the dog business was actually starting to come in, and when it was matching my salary at the gas plant, that's when I told my wife, I was like, it's time to actually pull the trigger. I said, as soon as we start making this salary, because I've always based my bills and my life
Yeah.
on my salary. I had bonuses and profit shares, all of that money. I didn't utilize as income. I would take it and invest it, spend it, try to get my business going.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. So I had a small salary of like, I don't know, like 100K a year. It was a decent salary. I worked freaking 10 years for that salary. It was a good salary. Um, Once the dog business started matching that salary, that's when I was ready to pull the trigger. And it was super scary because I was losing my profit shares, my bonuses, all of that stuff. But what I did before that, like I told you, is I went and bought the best equipment that's going to last me a long time with that extra money I was making in the gas company.
Yeah.
So when the dog business took off, man, it was kind of a ready made. Like we had 40 runs opened up, a big trailer, all the training equipment you can need, the knowledge because I've been doing it for a decade, before I said, hey, let's do it full time. And it was time to make that transition. Now, the other side to it, um, making that transition was a bit of a change because at that point now, you're not getting a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks or something. It's all based on you.
Yeah.
or me. And at that point, it was a little scary trying to make that decision. We just relocated to it was crazy. We relocated our whole life and our whole operation where we started our business to a complete new town for the gas company, and was only with the gas company for like 8 months, and then I decided to leave the company. So we went to a much bigger city where the cost of living was through the roof. Um, from a small East Texas town where we knew everybody, everybody knew us, and so it was a bit scary making that transition. But the only thing that kept me going was the people that we've built clients over the years. Man, they were so good to us. The social media platform, all of those followers, everybody that we kind of came up with through the years knew we were starting full time, and I mean, we don't really advertise for training. We stay full of dogs. And then we started another side of the business as well, the boarding and daycare side of it, and it stays full. So it all just kind of,
What is full?
I
What is
get
full for you?
40, 50 dogs. So yeah,
So how do you, okay, this is great. So this is where I'm gonna have some questions. So
yeah.
when you do, these are just dogs being sent into you? Like, or are these aren't all your breedings? Certainly not.
No, well, no, that's the other side of it. This is actually something that's happening to us right now. Um, I would say 90% of the dogs is our breedings. So that was always the goal. Every trainer wants to have their own dogs back in their kennel. That's like the dream for dog trainers. Like, I want to breed my own dogs, have my dogs in my kennel because I know what I have. It takes a lot of time, and I think it takes a lot of money to do that as well, because you're going to have a lot of off time because you're trying to produce and build up that army of dogs, I guess. Um, we only have a couple of breedings a year, and I mean like a couple, 2, 3 max. This year we're going to do 3. Last year we did 3. Every one of those puppies, I'd say 80% of those puppies are scheduled to come back for long-term training, 6, 8, 10, 18 months.
How do you structure
So
your
we're already
training?
set.
Do you have like set things where you go, this is how I do it? You have a package? How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's either and to kind of backtrack a little bit, when I talk about the number of dogs, I don't we've been very blessed with getting our dogs back for either boarding or for week training sessions or for uh daycare, all of that stuff. So I mean, we're full of dogs that we've produced, but there's about a 10% margin of it's all different kinds of breeds of dogs. You know, they're here right now. But we kind of we kind of base um our year on the litter of puppies that we have. And our programs is either first pick a puppy and pick it up in 2 years. You know, just leave it here. It doesn't go nowhere. You're welcome to come see it. You can come pick it up maybe once we establish obedience foundation. You can pick it up for a weekend, or it's pick a puppy, bring it back at 4 to 5 months old, and we start a 4-month obedience program, and then we start a 6-month gun dog program. After that, normally we'll send the dogs home to, depending on the client, to have a starter season with hunting, or we keep the dog. Um, we hunt it. I hunt it. Have clients that will take dogs and hunt them for us, guide services, and then we call the client and say, "Hey, your dog's ready." I mean, we've proven the dog can do the job. It's ready to go home. I'm not a big believer. Like, I don't want our young dogs out hunting. I want our 2-year-old dogs out hunting,
Yeah.
not our 1-year-old dogs. And so it's super hard to get that established if you don't have a strong foundation built, if that makes sense. Like, I mean,
Oh,
when I tell you,
100%,
when
man.
we made a lot of money and poured it into this business, the business was designed that it can sit still and not have a single dog at the kennel. It was paid for, if that makes sense. So we were not stressing trying to fill it up with dogs and have the income, to pay for everything. So that's kind of where I think that's kind of where we did really well with it.
Yeah.
So
So the majority of the dogs that you're training, if not all of them, are long
yeah.
term. Like they're pretty long term. What I would call long term, meaning like they're not just a in for a couple month window. They're
Oh hell no.
you're 4 months for a found for your obedience, and then you're tacking 6 months on top of that, so you're 10 months. Okay,
Yeah.
now you're making some sense to me. So, okay, so the you sell puppies, but you don't sell puppies to people that just as a puppy and they take it across the country and live with it and grow up and whatever. These dogs are coming back. Either maybe they live across the country, but they're not. Those dogs are with you. They're staying with you. They're either coming back to you or they're with you from the start, and they're with you for quite a while. So I train micro compared to what your capacity is, and
Hmm.
and for lots of reasons. But what I always have one or two going, and they're always out of breedings that we bred, because the whole purpose for me with this is to try to figure out, like, do I like the breeding? Did I like
Exactly.
what those puppies were? I'm not interested in selling a puppy that I'm not really happy training, because it's very selfish of me. I only want dogs that I like to train. So I gotta be able to train them to be able
No,
to
you're
do
we're on
this.
the same page there. We're on the
So
exact same page.
so
So
so when I do that, I might keep a dog, but like I've got one right now that um and I kept three out of the litter. There was nine of them. I kept three out of them for training. And my buddy that I bred with to have it, he has three of them. Eventually he'll have four of them. But so seven out of the nine were, and the other two are friends of his that he sees them all the time. He knows the dogs. And so,
mhm.
and actually one of them is a friend of, one dog went to a friend of mine. So like all nine dogs, we know exactly where they're at, and we really know a lot about them. But I keep like one or two, or in this case it was three for a period of time. But like she's laying behind me right now. Like I'm gonna have her. I've had her since she was 8 weeks old, and she's probably gonna be with me till, I'm guessing she's probably going to be 18 to 24 months, like somewhere in there, when she goes back to her owner. Now her owner lives 5 miles away from me. So like
Yeah.
he gets to see her. She'll go by him and his family from time to time and whatever. It's kind of similar to what you're doing, except you're doing it on a much greater scale. True?
Very true. And that's where it comes to the 7 days a week. We eat, sleep, and we live in a freaking kennel, man. I mean,
How
there's
many people,
clients here constantly.
how many people work for you?
Um, we're about to really take back off. So again, it's all based on a good program, 5, 6 people max, depending on, when it's slow. So there's times of the year where we send dogs out and we don't have as many because we're trying to hunt and do our thing. But right now, it's my wife, me. I have a kennel assistant. We have uh, two young. So we live in an area where there's a lot of homeschool kids. I guess we got lucked out there, and those kids come and work with the dogs too. They teach the dogs holding, walking on a leash, all of that fun basic stuff. My wife does all the obedience. My wife will take a puppy and raise that puppy until they're about 6 months old with her. Our kennels are 100 yards apart, but it's a very separate operation. I mean, complete different operations. Outside kennel is like full on gun dogs going out working. Her kennel is all obedience, keeping things in line, getting the dogs ready for me. So I honestly think it's a well-oiled machine. So when you ask, like, I mean, my family and my kennel assistants, we can take on a big number of dogs. And when we talk numbers of dogs, we built a business where a lot of them come back for boarding and training, and most of them are coming back for boarding after they've already been trained, or they come back for.
When you say
I'm
boarding,
talking to
is it like day boarding, or are we talking like going away for the week?
yeah, No, we built a good operation where it's, so daycare is daycare, boarding is going away for the weekend, dropping the dog off, and then
So those people live by you.
closer. Yeah. Yeah, and then we have clients all over too, but, um, when I sit and talk about this, the more and more I think about it, I mean, we just go and we work every day and the business is rolling, but I think I told my wife the other day, I didn't realize how big we've grown in just 4 years, and it's still working, but it's to a point, that's what I was meaning earlier, it's to a point where we're running out of breeding stock. Like, my dogs are getting old, and you know about training and knowing that what you have, and I'm scared to go out and change for different, bloodlines and different genetics because it's what we know. And just like you said, I love training certain dogs.
Yeah.
I'll train any dog. I'm not afraid to train
Are you
dogs.
keeping any of these pups
But
back? You're not keeping these pups back then?
I don't
Probably
keep
should
many
have,
back.
huh?
Yeah.
Hindsight?
Yeah, we have some good stuff coming up and I'm keeping some back, but it's a ways out. And we have some new girls that we just got in and we're looking for stud dogs and stuff. But man, um so let's say after hunting season, let's see, January, February, March, we start filling back up. Like these kennels will be 100% full. And come that time, that's when I start hiring day trainers. I pay all of these people like contracted labor, just pay them and then send them a 1099 at the end of the year on the business side of it.
Where do you find
But
them? Do you
that's
train
the
these people?
that's it. I have to train them, and I try to find the youngest people as possible that are into dogs because
Yeah.
those are the ones that don't know anything and they're willing to listen and do the job.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that simple. And to be completely honest, when you have a lot of good dogs, it's not that hard to train multiple dogs in a training session. It's very easy to me. When you have a lot of bad dogs, that's when it makes for a long, crappy day and even a long, crappy week.
Yep.
So I'm very particular on what we take in. Um, right before I got on the call with you, so this is a good example right here. A lady called me um, right before I got on the call with you guys. She has a 2-year-old chocolate female that lives on a farm. The dog just has free roam, and her boyfriend are going to be hunting the dog. They've taken the dog hunting. When you get the gun out, it just goes batshit crazy. It starts jumping. She's like, "We shoot, and it's halfway out there. It doesn't even know where the bird is." Just the typical. I think it's the typical um, person that doesn't understand the obedience side that you have to instill in these dogs before you even take them hunting.
Yep.
They're natural at hunting and doing the job. They're gonna do it, but you
Yep.
got to control them.
Yep.
And I'm talking for the ones that actually want to work and do the job. Um, and she's like, "Can you please just train my dog so that we can enjoy her while we're hunting?" And of course, I had to get the backstory, had to get everything figured out, but we accepted that dog in training a month from now for a 4-month obedience program.
Yeah.
So that dog obviously loves to go get the ducks. It's not afraid of the gun. It has a ton of drive. Now, I'm not going to waste the lady's time. If I have the dog for a couple of months and it's not fitting our program, I'm also not going to rush either. I don't just get in and say this dog doesn't fit our program. I'm going to give it some time to adjust and get on with the program with us,
Yeah.
teach it obedience. If it fits our program, that could potentially be a long-term client, or it could potentially be like, hey, sorry, your dog didn't fit our program. Call these guys that may want to put it on an e-collar or something like that.
Yeah.
I guess is where I'm going. So
Sure.
we do accept outside dogs as well.
Yeah.
Um, the people I have working for me know how to walk dogs on leads. They know how to correct dogs. They know how to teach them to heel, how to recall. They're instantly just going to be pushed over to with my supervision on obedience. And if they can accomplish obedience, they can accomplish the program. I'm setting that chocolate dog up for success by having 10 of my personal dogs here that are fully trained, that follow instructions, that dog should learn and get with the program. If it can't, then it doesn't fit our program,
Yeah.
is how I see it.
Where's your influence
So
from? Where did your influence and training come from?
I don't think I think I just kind of enjoyed dogs, man. And I went off of multiple different styles of training. So it wasn't I didn't pick up on anybody and say this is who I want to be, how I want to train dogs.
But
So
what you must have gotten some, I mean, you must have, um, when I say that, I don't want it to sound like, uh,
oh, you know what? I think I can answer that for you. When we took backstory, when we started getting into gun dogs and I started really kind of enjoying it after I trained a few dogs of my own and realized this is what I enjoyed doing. I got into working with a guy that was a white coat field trial, just uh just straight workhorse field trial Labradors. And I got into that for a few years. And this would kind of help you understand the British gun dog side of it. When when I started training those dogs, and when I was working at the gas plant and coming home and had like say 4 kennels with dogs in them, and my wife is pulling her hair out because these dogs are jumping in the kennels, barking, going crazy. She's like, "Hey, we can't be doing this. You can't be at work all day, and I'm trying to take care of these dogs." Basically, I was into the field trial American bred, just really, really strong, uh, driven dogs that only could be controlled with an e-collar. Uh, I don't know if there was any other way to control these dogs. It kind of it kind of pushed me away. I was like, this is not what I want to do. This is not how I want to handle dogs. This is not what I pictured when I pictured a hunting dog hanging out in the duck
were
blind
you
with me or
training with the
walking the
collar?
field.
Were you training with the collar back then?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Good.
That's all
Good.
I knew. That's all.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I
Where'd
knew
you
to
learn
do.
that part? Where'd you learn that? Where'd you pick that part up?
It was a guy named Brian, and he was a field trial trainer,
Okay.
and he taught me how to force fetch. He taught me how to use the e-collar, and then once I spent more time with him, he taught me that's they were too hard on the dogs, man. It was way too hard on those dogs, and it pushed me away completely from wanting to train that. And then this was about when Southern Oak Kennel was taking off. I was scrolling on Instagram, and I started following Southern Oak Kennel from a show. I think it was Max Prairie Wing in Arkansas. It was somewhere. I seen these dogs hanging out, being polite. People were petting them, and there was like 8 of them. I'm like, dang, how does this guy get all these dogs to listen? I can't even get 2 to listen for me.
Yeah.
And I go home and I try to get my dogs out and put them on play stands or homemade platforms and stuff. And I was like, these dogs don't even want to be team players. They don't want to work together. It's all about very possessive. Um, they're one-on-one dogs. They're very whiny, barking. When I was trying to work them together, it was making the training sessions worse. So I started really researching into British gun dogs and British style methods. And I reached out to Southern Oak Kennel and um, I bought a puppy from them. And I have both of those dogs. They're about to be 6. So about 6 years ago, I got my first British dogs. I purchased my first British dogs, but I was on a freaking year and a half waiting list. So that whole year and a half, I was trying to transition over. So I would say roughly 8 years or so, I've been training just British dogs. Or no, I'm sorry. My preferred method is British style training, and British field dogs is
Yeah.
what I want to work with. But we
Would you,
have some American labs still in training. So
so like, I've got, and so I would say that, I can be mirrored that it's just, for me, it's a generation or two back from there where like Robert Milner his book was really, um,
yeah.
his book, Back to the Basics approach was probably the first one I read that I was like, I like this. Mike Stewart was
Mhm.
really influential, and I saw him work dogs very similar to what you're saying, and I just that was what I was drawn to was watching his dogs. But then I feel like guys like old John Halstead. Like, I don't know if you've followed a lot of his stuff or seen a lot of his stuff. It's not
Yeah.
it's gonna be social media. It's like
Yeah.
8 stuff, man. We're talking like
Very old.
VHS. I've got his
Yeah.
VHS stuff. So, but and this will kind of lead into one of the questions that I'm going to ask more specifically, and I'll get to that. I'm enjoying this conversation. So, I do have a definite thing that I wanted to talk with you about. But so to me, I have had 1,000. When I ask you like who's your influences, the reason I ask that is because I've had 1,000 of them. Like, and
Mhm.
some of them are um very I would call very it more classic or old school style training, both American style and I would say European style. Like they're old. I mean, we're like again, we're talking like the 80s stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like the thing about it is in as time has gone by, I think everyone's tried to kind of grab a hold of whatever it is that their style is, whatever it is, their twist to it, their flair to it. It's all the same shit. It really is. Like if you look at back, before they even recorded stuff, like read books that, go back 30 years ago. Like 2000 is when I first dug into it.
Yeah.
Dug into it hard. That's when I bought my first British dog. That's when I really dug into this I'm going to call it a style of it shifted my style of training. But if you read stuff that was when I read that stuff in let's say 2000, it was stuff that was written in 1980. And
Mhm.
if I was born in 1980. So if I read something in 1980, it would have been written in 1950. Well, I read a bunch of stuff from 1950 too. And I got a book that I've been referencing back to regularly more recently that was written in 47. But if you go, it was in 1947. They wrote about this shit in 1900. Like all those books aren't that different. They're
Yeah.
the actual training is very, very similar. And it's
I'm gonna tell you the truth about something, man. If I would have sat down and did research and read books and did that stuff for myself, I don't know if I would be as good as a trainer as I am right now. I literally just sat out there and got my ass kicked for years trying to learn how to train dogs. If that makes sense to you. It was all about reading the dog. And then as I got further into it and understanding it more, that's when I started kind of researching things and picking up on, tips from trainers and books and stuff like that. But
Yeah, I agree, but
I probably approached it a different way.
I'll tell
So,
you right
but
now. No, I don't think you did. Here's where I tell you. Now,
I learned from my mistakes.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Hear me out. In 10 years, we'll have this conversation.
yeah,
You'll tell me a different story. And here's why. Because I think it took me probably 10 to 15 years where I didn't study anything.
exactly.
I didn't study shit. I shouldn't say that because I did. That Robert Milner book. Back to the
Mhm.
Basics approach. That was like the one that I read, and it's not very big. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a reader. There's a little
I was like,
book.
"Dang, man."
So, but I
Yeah,
read that book, and that really was powerful for me.
yeah.
I then used that for probably 10 years as my real driving force, maybe even more. But I would observe, I'd observe, I'd watch. But that wasn't necessarily where I honed skills. Where I honed skills was what you're saying. I just trial and error, trial and error, trial and error.
Y
And back then, I thought I was doing pretty damn good. But
yeah,
those
that's
first
right.
10 years, I thought I had the best dogs. I thought I had really, really good dogs. The last 10 years, I've realized how little I knew the first 10 years. And the last 5 years, I've studied more of the actual like really the details of it. Now, I'm not talking about the techie terms and all that shit because I don't understand any of that stuff. But
I don't
like,
either,
because
man.
the certifications of dog trainers and the this and the that, and they got all these letters in front of your name and all that stuff. You're certified in this, you got this course. I don't care about that stuff. I don't do that stuff. And I'm not knocking people who do because I get it. But I've read more, watched more, listened more, talked to more, I never would have had this phone call with you 10 years ago because I
Yeah.
wouldn't need to know what you had to say. So I bet you 10 years from now, you'll probably, maybe not, but I know for me,
No, no, I
the
agree.
last
And
10
that's
years,
what I was
I've
saying.
learned more than I've ever learned before. And that's after
Th
15 years of doing it.
There you go. That's what I mean. The more and more the more years I'm into it now, the more studying and research and I mean, there is a science behind it, and dogs are some amazing creatures, man. It is if I can tell you this, like, if you're out to just do this to make a living and to make money, you're gonna be a terrible dog trainer. You have to
Well, you
understand
won't do it very long.
that
I don't
you're
think
not
you'll
gonna
do
do
it
it
very
very
long.
long either.
No,
And
you'll
you
burn
have to
out.
understand to read these animals, like, you better know each dog like the back of your hand. That's all I can say, and that's why we're so successful with the group of dogs because they're all from our breedings. They're who we are.
Sure.
Now, I can backtrack, and again, there was a gentleman that was a dog breeder when I started when I wanted to get out of these field trial labs that were just too much. I I a gentleman he knew me my whole life and he lived in Pennsylvania at the time and he moved to Texas and he was still breeding in Texas. He wasn't a big breeder. He actually he bred too many dogs, but he wasn't a well-known breeder. He would just go sell them at like the first Monday sales and stuff like that, like the auction sales. But he actually had some really good dogs from his personal. I mean, and this is an 80-year-old man. He's a very old man. He had some really good stuff genetic wise that he trained, and he was a very good dog trainer, in his early years. And I think many times I would go over there and help him. I would sit on the porch and talk to him. He would assist me, like, "Hey, my dog is running around the pond. What the hell do I do?" He's like, "Go to a creek where it doesn't have a choice. Run through the creek and back through the creek to you."
Sure.
Just stuff like that. So I did learn a lot from him as well. But the I never tried to get my hands in with the I didn't wanna be somebody else. I wanted to be my own person when it came to dog training. So
Sure.
I didn't wanna just find somebody and say, "This is how I wanna train a dog, and this is how you train a dog." So I
Yeah.
just had to kinda do it on my own style, right, and see if it worked. And I can remember trying to take a bunch of disrespectful dogs that I had in training that I was really struggling with, put them all out together and say, "All right, here's your free time, guys. Go run and play and run in this field." And they take off, and I lost like 4 of them. Bastards ran off. I'm searching for freaking 2 hours for them. Just it's a crap show, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a lot of stuff like that. They just so I getting back to that was probably me not understanding how to train properly, and then just not getting the dogs that fit my program in. I wasn't the right trainer for those dogs,
Yeah. Yeah.
when I started, and it resulted into terrible. I don't think I've ever got a bad name for myself because I worked really, really hard, but I was never satisfied with those dogs, and that wasn't a good sign for me. Like, I'm sending a dog home that I'm not happy with that I had for 5 months or something. I didn't
Yeah.
like that. It didn't feel
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So,
What?
anyways,
So
but
let me ask you this. What, and I might be disappointed in this answer, quite honestly, because I did not know your backstory, because I didn't know your backstory.
yeah.
Now, so now I'm gonna, I like made this kind of a little bit of a list of these questions, and I didn't tell you any of this stuff ahead of time because I wanted to be, and I told you that I want to have a conversation here.
You're
But
good, man. You're
so
good.
what I was going to ask you is, or what I want to know is, what do you think? And again, I might be disappointed in this answer based on what I've heard the last 40 minutes. What do you think the biggest difference is in training a client's dog versus your own personal dogs? How many personal dogs you got?
I own 9.
Okay. Ranging in various ages, I suppose. Or are they all a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
older?
No, they're I have some younger dogs coming up and
What
yeah,
do you think
and
that, so what do you think the biggest difference is in training your personal dogs, dogs that you own, versus training the client's dog that was or was not bred from you? Let's take for instance let's do it two ways. Let's do it first with one of your own puppies. When
Mhm.
you bred a puppy, you sold it to Tim from El Paso, Texas. How far
Yeah,
away? How far is El Paso from me? I have no idea where Texas is, but
probably
El,
like 6 hours, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
El Paso, Texas is 6 hours from you. You sold him a puppy. You sold him a puppy that he wanted you to train for him, and he wants to hunt with. And so you said, Tim, not you, Tim, a different Tim. I can
Yeah, I
train
got you.
your dog. What's the difference between training Tim from El Paso's dog and Tim from what's the town you're in? Aren't you in Magnolia?
I'm in Magnolia, but it's North Houston, so
Isn't
we're,
that Chip and Joanna?
well, that's another story, but no, that's Waco,
Oh, okay.
but we have trained the realtor's dogs that own Magnolia Realty.
Okay. They're connected to that, right? Like I'm not a
Yeah.
my wife used to watch that show. So we don't watch a lot of TV.
Yeah, they are connected, but, the that is in Waco, Texas, but, uh, an awesome guy. He bought 2 dogs from, Livingston GunDogs, and we're a lot closer than Livingston, so he'd bring them
Sure.
here for training and upkeep and stuff. So,
Okay.
but
So
yeah, no, that
Tim from El Paso and Tim and Magnolia. What's the biggest difference you see between training those two dogs?
the biggest difference is not having enough time sometimes because all dogs are different. Like it's hard to give them a set program. So you run
That's
sometimes I feel like you run into the getting rushed and pressured and you don't produce the quality.
a great answer. Like
So
I couldn't agree anymore. I'm gonna write an article actually for GunDog. I do this column for them, and one of the topics this year is I'm gonna write it. I'll use some of this probably in it because I feel like the title is going to be unprofessional, and
yeah,
the reason I say that is because professionals live by a different set of rules as far as what they can work with, and time is the biggest one. And I feel like the beauty of training your own dog is you don't have that, right? Like you're not under that pressure of I have a window of time. So I can
yeah.
appreciate that answer. Like I feel like that's the best answer in the world. I was gonna I was actually thinking you were gonna say, you know what, there's really not that big of a difference because when I bring him in as a client's dog, I got him for a hell of a long time, which you kind of do in comparison to most.
Yeah, to most, but that's we don't play that game though, man. Like I'm straightforward with the client. Like I'm not gonna be rushed. You're not gonna tell me how to train your dog. If you're bringing your dog, you trust me and you know what I'm doing. Um, and if you run out of funds, pick your dog up. It's just that straightforward because I'm putting time every single day
Yeah.
that I can.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
not
would
saying that the crappy thing is people now I don't think people don't really mess with me no more because I guess they trust they're getting a product that I'm producing. Like you're gonna get a good dog from us. Used to, it was like, and I'm thinking years back, like, how'd my dog do today? Your dog sat in the kennel today. He didn't even work. How about that? Because he was a crap head yesterday and he needed some time off. There's something off in his head. He needed time off.
yeah.
Stuff like that. They don't understand that. There's
I think you're unique in that. I don't think that is the norm when it comes to if I were to talk to a kennel that trains 40 dogs. I don't think that's the norm. So I think
it's
that's
not.
real interesting to
Yeah,
me, actually. Kind of refreshing to hear
it,
actually, but
it's not the norm, but it's about the end product is
sure.
what I've always said. It really is because there may be some days because it comes with experience and lots of hard work and just learning how to read a dog. Like I make it teach your dog something in 15 minutes that took you a month to try to teach,
Yeah.
if that makes any
Totally.
sense.
Totally.
Because you know it. You know how to correct it, you know how to fix it, you know how to read the dog, look the dog in the eye, and I don't know, whatever it takes at that time.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's a craft. It's a craft and some people don't, I can't build I've got a construction background, but
mhm,
I can't do a plumbing job that I need to do down at my shop as well as a plumber. My buddy's a plumber. He can come here and he can do it in no time flat and he'll do it really
yeah,
well. I'll it up a million times and it'll take me 10 times as long and it still won't be done right because it's not my craft. So I
Exactly.
totally get that. Um,
Yeah, don't give me a saw and ask me to cut a straight line on wood. It's
yeah,
terrible.
it's
Like
yeah. So
I just don't.
there's a this is a trade or I'm gonna call it also an art at times because I
Mhm.
think there's an art to it. I think there's an art to plumbing. I think there's an art to all this stuff. And I don't think we recognize necessarily that all the time. But
So you can't. One person physically cannot go out and train the amount of dogs that I have. There's no way possible. You can't. Like there may be some days. This is
there's not
the
enough
truth behind the
hours.
business.
Do the
There's not
math,
enough
right?
hours in the day. Yeah, there's not enough hours, and I'm not trying to hide that. But what I do, again, I'm very transparent with every one of my clients. I'm constantly on the damn phone while I'm working. I'm on the phone still at nighttime. Like I don't shut it off, man. I don't say it's 5 o'clock. I'm not talking to nobody. Like I'm up early, go to bed late. I'm answering all questions. I don't ignore clients' calls. I hear a lot of this shit from people like, hey, I haven't heard from my dog trainer in a month. You're not going to do that with me. You're going to
Yeah,
hear from me a lot. And if you ask a question, you'll get a response. If it's the response, now what my clients understand is progress takes a little time. Some dogs are different. Like I may have litter mates here, and the brother is on top of the world, and the sibling is still learning how to walk on a lead, and
yeah,
they've been here the same freaking time. I can't explain why,
yep,
but I promise you, we'll get the dog where it needs to be if you're patient with me. And it may be the same amount of time. It may be a 4 month program, but it might have came together right at the last 2 freaking weeks.
sure.
That's
No, I
happened.
get it. I get
It's
that.
the dumbest thing.
Yeah, I
And
totally
if
get
I
it.
could ever learn that,
Yeah.
but
So
when we have this amount of dogs, like what I'm fixing to have, I'm 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 gonna have me personally, I have 15 dogs that I have to train starting March 1st. And then my wife has um 7 that she's doing obedience with. So we're getting closer to the higher numbers, the mid-20s. Plus, I have my personal dogs, so that's going to put us up there to 30 something dogs.
yeah,
And my personal dogs do get worked because my personal dogs is what advertises my business. Those are the dogs I take out and people see and they say, "Hey, I gotta have a dog like that." Of
sure,
course
sure,
you do. Come over and let's see if we can build you one.
sure.
So,
No, it makes sense.
but
Let me ask you this. What are the what are the biggest issues? So this gets into the nuts and bolts of this.
yeah,
What are the biggest issues or concerns that you see with retrievers in the training? And this is a really general thing. I've got two things that always jump into my mind, but I want to ask you, what are the two issues or concerns you see coming up with retrievers in training? Yours, clients, maybe clients more often, but or people that are coming in, people that what and even maybe when you're out in public, like if you're out doing a demo somewhere. I asked this
yeah,
question. I did a demonstration at a Wisconsin Waterfowl Association show last year, and I asked this question, and both the number one and my number one and number two, the crowd answered it that way. So I don't think I'm off, but I want to hear what your thoughts are because you're a different person because you're a trainer as opposed to the public uh, average person owning a retriever.
yeah. My biggest issue to answer that to is just bringing dogs to me, or the I guess that coming up as retrievers in the kennel is a little different than bringing dogs to me, because the biggest issue I have
Yeah,
with dogs coming in is very, very short attention spans and uh terrible obedience. Like just focused on the handler who has the dog at the time. Like the dogs are more wanting to burn that energy by running and playing with other dogs, and not actually focusing on the handler at the time. So
sure.
the biggest issue I guess is
Wrong answer.
uh,
No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. So
I don't
okay, no, and it's not a wrong answer. I'm just joking. But
No, I was trying to figure out the best way to answer
more
that for you,
specific.
but
Think more specific to retriever. So your answer can't be foundation related. It's got to be
yeah.
retrieve. And I shouldn't say that either because I'm probably I I really wanted you to hit on these because I don't want it to, but
No, no.
maybe I'm wrong.
Okay,
Maybe
like
it's
they're
maybe
on the
I'm
no, 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 on the retrieving side, and the hardest freaking thing to teach a dog if it's not taught properly and the time consuming is on retrieving side is hold and delivery. And that's one thing you and
bingo,
I spoke about earlier.
bingo.
And
Okay.
I get where you're going with this, and I wanted to touch this topic because it is a huge struggle, especially non-force fetch dogs. And I don't believe in the force fetch method at all. I'm kind of against it. I'm 100% against it. Um, but if you cannot, my rule of thumb, and this is as simple as it gets, if you cannot sit down, shut up, and pay attention, or hold and deliver the bumper, you're not going to go out and work. Simple as that. So every dog is taught that.
Sure.
Until they understand that, they don't go out in the field and do their job.
So
So,
so my thought with or my so I now we're talking the same track. My thing is like I think the number one and number two, and it can be interchanged, is for most people, I think what they struggle with the most is delivery, having their dog deliver well, and steadiness. I think those are the two things that people struggle with the most. And
yeah.
if you back me up 20 years, 25, 20, 23, 24 years now, when I first, like 2000 was when I had retrievers growing up 30 years ago, 40, no, I'm 44. So like 35 years ago, I guess. But 24 years ago is when I bought my first lab that was my own, that was my dog.
Hmm.
And I was amazed at the idea of a steady dog that delivered well. Like
Yeah.
that was just mesmerizing. It's what absolutely sunk its teeth into me when I saw it. I saw
And-
I saw dogs deliver and were steady as a rock, and I thought, I can't even imagine that. And all of my buddies, and I couldn't have been the only one because all of my buddies in my circle were all getting dogs around late 90s into the early 2000s. We were all out of high school and getting our own places, whatever. We were all getting our first hunting dogs, our own first hunting dogs. None of them had steady dogs that delivered really well. And so I wasn't the only one. And if you did, you really stood out. You really shined.
Mhm.
And so I want to set steadiness aside because I think steadiness goes back closer to foundation. Like I think a steady dog is built with a good foundation. But this delivery part, what
It's
is
tough.
mind blowing to me, and now this leads us into this little channel of force fetch, and I'm clearly not a force fetch guy. I've never done force fetch, and I've never had to, quite honestly. So and I think force fetch is a completely different subject. I think it's a subject that is depending on who you talk to, it changes and varies.
Yeah.
I think
And
it's a
I can like there's some days like I've been doing this a long time and I still struggle with the fact of not completely um or maybe not completing a good hold conditioning foundation before we start working. And I catch myself having to backtrack like, dang, now we're shopping. Now we're picking up multiples,
sure.
dropping, picking up. And those are when, I post all of this stuff on Instagram and we have a pretty good following and people just rail me. Like, if your dog was force fetched, they wouldn't do that. And I'm not going to get into the force fetch thing.
Yep.
And so, but I show dogs struggling at delivery,
Yeah.
struggling, walking circles around me because I'm just showing you what we're doing.
Totally.
If you pay attention to me long enough, you'll see that same dog maybe 6 months from now coming to heel or a nice, clean front delivery
Right.
because I'm okay with that as well.
All that stuff is
So,
out of context. All that social media shit is all out of context, and it's
yeah,
all like specific to. I get it. I get it. I've gotten it forever. Like I
yeah,
totally understand what you're saying.
yeah. But it was just one of those things like, I, you know, I can remember the first time I force fetched a dog and I thought it was like I completed the training. I spoke with a gentleman how to do it. He showed me how to do it. It was a guy named Brian, and it didn't harm the dog. The dog was fine. The dog was so bullheaded. I don't think
Right, they're
anything
built,
would
a lot of
hurt the
dogs are
dog.
built for it. A
He
lot
did
of dogs
not
I
give
think
a
are
shit
intentionally built.
what you did to him. Yeah,
I
I
think a lot of
mean,
them are
the dog
intentionally built for it, quite honestly.
like he thrived off it. He knew he was about to get on the table and get his toes pinched. Like he was pumped,
Yeah.
man. He's like, "Yeah,
Weird.
pinch my toes."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I don't think it's an accident. I don't think it's an accident, especially over the last 50 years.
yeah. So, anyways, but that dog, I could walk around the shop and say, "Hey, fetch it up," and it would pick up a damn, you know, 1-inch wrench, and
Sure.
anything. It would, it
Totally.
would, it would do. When I said fetch, it would grab it. It didn't care, and it would hold it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to be honest, once I started training, I realized that not all dogs were built that way, and I was
Hell
I
no.
was screwing up some dogs, man. Like this was not working.
Yeah.
Like this shit didn't work. This dog, when you're on that table, whether force fetch or hold conditioning or the dog stand, whatever you're doing, you're training on, you're building a bond with that dog. That's when you make the most eye contact, the most time spent face to face with that dog. And if
Yeah.
you don't think you're building a bond or breaking a bond, you're wrong.
Right.
That is
You'll never
that's when you
you'll
really
never
learn that dog.
I totally agree. I think it's one of the unmentioned benefits of going through some type of formal training that way. I
Yeah,
think you come out of it closer than you've ever been. And I think that that's really a
that's right.
valuable thing.
It's a
Now,
lot made right there.
and
So
and so and I also think, and I don't want to get us hung up on force fetch, but I also think that the thing that has to be understood too by people is it is it is in it is at times specific to retrieving and holding and carrying and picking stuff up. It's also
yeah,
an absolute philosophy of learning. And it's beyond beyond the retrieve part. It's avoidance. It's being able to understand to turn off pressure and avoid pressure by doing certain behaviors. And that
yeah.
translates into certain styles of training to allow them to do certain things, going, sending a dog, forcing to piles. Like you can't that it's all like this gateway. Totally
Mhm.
different thing, and we don't need to spend our time on it. And there's nobody here to defend it. And I don't like talking about shit when there's someone here to defend it. That's different. That's for
No,
different.
I'm not talking against it. Look, I'm not against anybody's style of training or an e-collar or nothing. It's just not what I want to do at all. I
Totally.
don't care for it. I
Yep.
don't want to do it. If you guys want to keep up with it and do it, that is great.
Yeah,
Um, we're just not. It's not how I want to train. It's not how I want to spend my day working with the dogs.
for
So,
sure. And
and
so
and to be like, I tried to get into the hunt test world when I got into the game early on and realized that that was a joke for me. Like it wasn't what I was training.
yeah,
It wasn't what I was doing. I think people were actually against. I mean, they were laughing at my whistles and the way I was handling dogs and shit. Like they were telling me, "No, you can't handle your dog this way. You have to handle it like this if you're going to get a pass." And I'm like, "What? Why would I do that?"
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
got out of that real quick too. And we have some clients now that are getting into some hunt tests, and we've had some in the past. And I'm pumped for them. I'm so happy that they're out there doing that and working with their dog. It shows that they enjoy being with their dog. But it's also not a way to base how to train a dog
Right, right.
because that's a very certain, thing they ask you to do. It's sight marks and it's very different. That's not how you train a hunting dog.
Well,
And I
I was
think a
just gonna
lot of
say,
operations train them that way.
I
So
do think it is a way to base the training of a dog, but it's basing a training of a dog for a specific thing, and that is
for
that
the hunt
test,
test,
that trial,
that's
whatever it
that,
is. So
yeah, yeah.
I totally agree on that. Now,
Yeah, I don't want to piss nobody off. I just mean
no, I agree
it's
because
not how I picture my hunting dogs. So
I think you and I think folks that think similar to us have to do a better job. I've done a terrible job of it. I've done a really bad job
yeah,
of being very, very quick to say what's negative about another style or another thing or another interest. And that's wrong on my part. And this is something that if if you're if you're your age and you're your amount of years into doing this dog thing, you're a decade ahead of me because it took me, I wasn't doing
yeah,
that 10 years ago. And so I need to get better at it, which is why I wanted to talk with you about this stuff. So now what I want to talk about with you is, okay, we understand where we feel on some of the alternative methods and ways of doing it. what do you do to not have to do that? Because instead of saying what we shouldn't do, I think we need to do a better job of explaining what we do and why we do it. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it because I have changed. Again, this is after 15 to 20 years of this shit. I changed 5 years ago completely my mindset on it. And that's where I go in 10 years, you're going to feel differently than you do today. I think you will. But let's talk about what do you do so that you don't have to do the alternative when it comes to getting a dog to deliver it well to you. And I want you to go first because
Yeah.
I'm curious on your thoughts. I don't want to steer it anyway, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So the just kind of like the basics on how we start our hold conditioning is first and for like if I have a puppy that's and this is where it's comical to me because like when we have young puppies coming up and say if it's a puppy that does not get to be raised at the kennel and it goes home and comes back at a later age,
Yep.
I tell the client like even if it's your damn Gucci shoe, you got to encourage that dog to deliver that shoe to you or walk away. Do not do not get onto that puppy for picking up and delivering something to you.
Yep.
So we encourage like whatever it's grabbing. I tell the owner, pick your shoes up, keep stuff picked up. Let's, if you're gonna have a puppy in the environment, think about that. But anything it does pick up, encourage the puppy. Let it prance around, be happy with it, walk away, bring it on, and then the reward base is whatever the puppy's carrying, grab and good dog. Put the shoe up. Try to translate that over to a bumper or some sort of dog retrieving method versus an house. I'm screwing that up, but
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
yeah, it just we try to encourage the dogs early on to always carry something in their mouth. If it's a freaking stick or a bumper or whatever it is, it's a reward. Like you did a good job. Thank you for bringing that to me.
Yep.
And it works really, really well. Now here's where it gets kind of crazy. Now the puppies are willing and doing that on their own. They're going out and grabbing stuff and bringing it on their own, no matter what it is. If we're tossing a bumper out, because I get this issue quite a bit. Honestly, is they have their 4 or 5 month old puppy. Man, I throw the bumper, the puppy brings it back. It's holding it, wagging its tail. It's happy as can be. That's perfect. So they think that their puppy has hold and delivery down. What they don't understand is the puppy's willing to do that on their own. Now, when I start asking the puppy to do it, when I set the puppy on a stand and I say, hold this bumper, it's moving its head, it's spitting it out. No, I don't want to hold this bumper. You're crazy. Why are you making me hold this bumper? So that's when it becomes kind of a challenge. In that point, going back to how we do our process, normally I will get a dog um, on a stand and I use a leather glove and I put my hand in the dog's mouth and I pet the dog while it holds my hand. Very simple. If it's fighting me, I pull my hand out, I put my hand back in. It's a long stinking process. Some dogs pick up on it so fast. Some dogs it's a couple of days, they're sitting there holding your hand, wagging their tail, and they're happy. Other dogs, you may be a freaking week on being able to even put your hand in front of the dog's mouth. And what I was getting at, you know, when the puppy was out running and being a puppy and doing its own thing, it gladly would pick stuff up and run around and bring it to you. But now that I'm asking it to do it, it's when it becomes a challenge. It's not the end of the road. You'll get the dog to deliver the bumper again or deliver, and hold, but it's no different than somebody telling you and asking you versus you doing your own thing. And most people kind of like to do their own thing, is
When
where I see where it starts to become, it becomes a bit of a challenge for holding and
when are
delivery.
you
So
when are you doing so I'm going to call that more formal. I'm going to call that
yeah,
hey, we're formally doing something here to actively try to work. I would call for me and it's all terminology stuff and it's semantic, but I would
yeah,
say hold conditioning is a process that we go through with certain dogs. So
yeah,
Do you consider that similar? Do you consider it similar to that? Like, is it when you say, "Hey, I'm going to put you on an elevated platform. I'm going to put a leather glove on, and I'm going to put it in your hand or in your mouth." And is that like a formal, "Hey, here's this part where I've gotten to this point where I'm going to do this with that dog." Is that something? Is that how you think about it?
Uh, we go. I go off of maturity of the dog, I guess. So as the dog, and normally once they're, I start hold conditioning. Man, this is kind of hard. There's a few dogs here that I've never done hold conditioning with, and I don't. They, they're perfect at it. I don't. I wish I could have them all like that. But
Yeah.
I
Well, we're
start hold conditioning once the dog starts having discipline issues with playing with the bumper.
They've shown some
Um,
symptoms. They're showing some symptoms that
yeah,
you want to see go on. We're in the same boat.
exactly.
I'm
And,
in the
and
same
and
boat.
and I don't know what age that is. Sometimes it's like
Yeah.
8 months old.
Yeah. No, so it's driven off symptoms. It's not driven off any type of structure or formal age. It's if I'm running into some issues, this is how I will treat that and remedy it.
And at that point, the dog's a little bit rebellious. We're seeing some issues, and we're going on the table, and that's when they're saying, "Hell no, you're not making me do this."
Why do you do the
You know?
glove? What is the purpose of the glove for you? Is it because your hand is flexible, or do you just want to
Yeah,
keep your hand rigid, or are you trying to create some type of like are you holding on to the dog while the dog holds you? Is that kind of it? Or why do you do that?
yeah. I believe like a dog should never be afraid of me. Like I should be able to grab you and you be calm, right?
Sure. Sure.
So if I just stick my hand in your mouth and you're pulling away, obviously there's a disconnect between me and the dog. Any of my dogs, any dog that's been properly through, my style of holding, I can reach in and hold its mouth and it just sits there. Like, why
Sure.
are you holding my mouth? So that's why. Because
Okay.
think like go stick your hand in a new dog's mouth and it's going to be pulling and fighting you.
So
At that point,
you're not asking the dog to hold you. You're holding the dog.
I'm holding the dog,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And I'm not,
I've never done that before. And
but
I always
think
wondered, why
about
do they
that
do it?
though. Yeah. I just believe that's when you really start building that trust right there. Like, again, we go back to the age thing. Like the dog started being a little bit rebellious, chewing or throwing the bumper up. As that's where I'm getting at. As puppies, they're natural retrievers. They're going to go out and retrieve, prance around. They should have their head up, their tail up, happy as can be with whatever they picked up.
Do you
As they
have you
get a little bit older,
go ahead,
do I?
go ahead. I
As
just
they
got
get
a
a little
follow
bit
up.
older and they start cutting teeth, they're going to want to chew on stuff. Um, it, as they get introduced to other dogs, they're going to want to maybe play tug of war, or if they go find a stick or something. Or you bring me a dog that you've raised in your home with your children, and y'all play tug of war all day. There's just issues. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know how old the
Yeah.
dog
No,
is when we
no.
start the whole conditioning.
Yeah, no, the
Um,
way I describe it is it's driven by symptoms. You've gotten to a point where
mhm.
you got a bad habit, you got something that you got to either stop because it's just going to get worse, or it's
Yeah.
certainly not going to fix itself, and it's to a point where it's creating issues.
You don't want to chase the dog, yell at it, say, "No, drop it. What are you doing?" Because then you're disencouraging it. Like, I thought I was supposed to be retrieving and bringing this to you.
Yeah, I look
You
at it
you really
as
want to try to walk away and ignore the dog if you can. Like, ignore that habit until you actually get on the elevated stand and you start working together and figuring it out. Um,
I feel like what happens is a lot of times is when you do like I think people need to understand when they do a retrieving setup, any type of retrieve, the objective needs to be you shouldn't be doing it just to do it. You need to do it to try to accomplish you're trying to accomplish something. You're trying to gain something in your training. And if you set
yes.
something up, the objective in those types of setups is whatever that objective is, whether it be sending a dog on a line, extending the line, having a dog hunt, whatever it is, your goal with that setup is that the goal cannot be the what can't happen is the end of it be an absolute cluster because the dog won't deliver because whatever it is you were trying to achieve in it is lost if you can't
It's
get it
lost.
to the end.
That's right.
So
It's so important.
I always tell people the delivery is the delivery and let's say the delivery is the end. That's the period at the end of the sentence. If you don't have the sentence and you're trying to build this sentence. Well, the beginning part of the sentence for me a lot of times is the setup. So I might need to heel the dog out to set this up. If I can't get the dog to heel, you can't put a sentence together because you don't have the first part, and you can't turn it into a drill about heel work if you're trying to accomplish something about lining. Like, you can't be
Yeah,
working 7 different things in one setup because none of them are going to connect. And so to me, the delivery at the end is what has to be there in order to accomplish what preceded it. And if it's a fucking mess, then whatever you did to begin with, in the middle of that setup is lost. So I think
completely
we're
lost.
I think we're on the same there. So now I want to circle back to this. So I think, maybe I'm totally wrong. I might be the only person who's thought this. I've seen this as an introductory part of force fetch. Put a leather glove on, put it in the dog's mouth. I've also seen where they do that to start out with. I have not seen necessarily the holding of the mouth. I've never noticed that. I've noticed it. They put their hand in there and they want them to hold, hold, hold. And they
Yeah,
feel like they're asking the dog to hold them. And then a lot of guys and girls, whatever, will next do is put the glove in the mouth, let the dog hold, hold, hold. Well, to me, that's the dog holding the glove, which is now what started out holding my hand. Now it's holding the glove. See, what I never realized was, if you're going in there and holding the dog, I look at that and I go, you're hooking in with them. Like, I hook in with my dogs
yeah,
in heel work. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, I'm connecting with them physically, but also it becomes physical. But then what happens is when they stop fighting it, if they were to fight it, when they stop fighting it, you know what you're going to get. You know you're going to get their eyes to you. And so now
yeah. You're gonna get your
I've
result.
created
That's right.
I've created the hook in. I've hooked in with them. And I think that's a horse. I'm not a horse guy, but I watch more horse people than I do dog people when it comes to like trying to learn shit. And hooking in is so important. And that, I feel like I
Yeah.
have to do that with the dog. So that makes sense. So let's say you do. So that's a part of your initial process. You have a symptom. You go to the table. At this point, are you not retrieving with them anymore, or do you keep retrieving?
Um, not yes, we retrieve, but not consistently. I mean, maybe most it's crazy. Most of the dogs that go to holding, it's not crazy. It's how we train. Most of my dogs that go to holding, they're already 100% steady and excellent at lining, retrieving, all kinds of stuff. Holding is kind of a back thing for me, like a symptom, like you said, when we start seeing
Yeah.
an issue.
So you wait till
Um,
later on. You develop a lot of stuff in front of it, and you clean it up
yeah,
kind of at the end.
I do, and because I just think we've built a good bond. And I'm not saying go and grab onto your dog's mouth and your dog, because some of them are not going to like it and they're going to fight you. And if you're
Sure.
at that point, you become forceful with the dog. You're kind of ruining the whole training session. You got to know
Yeah.
when to back off and when to start trusting. It's
And
you
I'm
got to
not
know what you're
criticizing. I'm
doing.
not criticizing at all.
Yeah.
I actually like I feel like there's a
I'm
difference.
just meaning I don't want nobody to make the mistake, because you can
Sure.
screw up and disconnect with the dog, and the dog be
Yeah.
like, "Dude, screw
Absolutely.
you, man. Don't come
Sure.
close to me."
Sure.
And
But
if you're not going to complete your force training method, then you're done. The dog's not going to trust you.
right.
So that's and
So
we're not going to be force training. So,
so I'm going to ask you
but
this. Okay. So this is really interesting to me. And the way you're talking is exactly how I used to do it too, where I would go, I'm going to get a lot of stuff in place over time, and we're on the same page when it comes to like, it's Noah Parsons? He's SOK
possibly.
Flint Hill. He's
Oh
got
yeah, yeah,
a,
yeah.
so Noah's a pretty good buddy of mine, and he has shared some really good insight with me over the years. And one of the things that, it's simple terms, it's simple talk stuff, but he uses this line of take what the dog will give you. And he got it from David Latham,
Oh yeah.
and it's take what the dog will give you, take what the dog will give you. So when I look at this take what the dog will give you mentality, I've tried to adapt it into my mindset with everything. I used to go through similar to what you're saying, is I'd just take what the dog gave me over time. I'd put the pieces together. I'd work on steadiness relatively early on. I'm not going to say super early on, but within reason. I'd rather shape shape the behavior from the beginning. So I'd start to steady them up, and then I'd get them steady, and then I'd require them to be steady.
Yeah, but
I wouldn't allow it to get
wh-
sloppy.
one thing about steadiness, though, and we can get in this another time too. People automatically think to steady up a dog, meaning you throw something out and it sit there and stay until you release it. That's steady. I get it. But in my way of thinking, to steady up a dog is multiple things. Like steady is sit, I open a door, I walk out.
Sure.
Here, recall. Steady is everything. And so that's why it's taught. Like, I think people make the mistake. Like, you don't want to take the drive away from your puppy, and you're not going to take the drive away from your puppy if it's natural at it. But some people do. Like, they take a really driven, hardworking puppy and they make it sit on that board and they try to throw a bumper out and they make it hold and then they release it. And we're talking a 4-month-old puppy. I'm like, why are you doing that right now? There's other methods and ways to teach that dog to be steady versus throwing a bumper and holding it and releasing it by command. You want it to drive to that bumper as hard as possible when it's released. So I'm not big on steadying to mark. I'm big on steadying obedience, and you'd be surprised how it transitions into marks because they understand what's, and you'd be surprised when you blow a whistle and say sit and walk away, you'll be 200 yards from the dog and it's still sitting there. If you really build your obedience foundation around steadying to everyday life,
Yeah.
like which would,
Now I think what happens there is part of the confusion or part of the cloudiness
yeah,
is I think there's two separate things there. I think there's foundation, and I think there's more formal retrieving or field stuff. And I think, and I'm not saying they should be separated, but what I'm saying
yeah,
is the idea of, so when I say you're steadying your dog, that's another semantic thing. Like, what do you take as steadying and what do I take as steadying? It's the exact same line as let him be a puppy. Let a puppy be a puppy. I love that line and I absolutely despise it. It's the exact,
no, both ways.
it just depends on what that means to the individual. So when I say steady, going back to that talk track, you're putting some foundational stuff in. You've put foundational stuff in. You're working on some field stuff, but your process tends to go along the line of you'll correct or polish or shape up or clean up that delivery a little bit down the road. I'm not saying way down the
Yeah,
road, but at some point down the road when the dog is ready and you're to the point where the symptom is become enough that you don't want to deal with it anymore and you want to fix it. Sound
I
kind
think it would be the same with steadying up as well. So
of okay.
it would,
I used to
yeah.
be the
Anyways, yeah.
exact I used to be the exact same way when it came to the delivery.
Hmm.
I'd put it off, I'd put it off, I'd put it off. Okay. Now I'm going to have you start thinking about these few dogs that you have mentioned, particularly, I think it sounded like some of them were your own dogs that you never had to do it. Just never had to get to that. Okay. So think of what those dogs were. Never had to do the formal type of hold conditioning. Think in your mind of who those dogs were and what those dogs were and jog your memory on them. Because now what I'm going to tell you is I used to, until about 3 years ago, I would have said maybe even more than that. I was trying to think of this just the other day. It might have been closer to 4 years, but I prior to that would have said you have to do some type of formal delivery training. And the force fetch world would say yes, it's force fetch. You have to do that. I would have said, well, I don't think you have to do that, but I do think you have to do some type of formal delivery. And my version of it, and it wasn't mine. I didn't invent it. I picked it up from a bunch of people that have been doing it before. Hold conditioning is the way I would
Yeah.
describe it. And it's a process. It's probably a similar process to what you do. There might be some variations to it, and there always are going to be. I think there have to be, but depending on the dog. But I always would have said you have to. Now, for the last 3 or 4 years, I have not done it with a single pup. And I would say
Yeah.
that their deliveries, now I'm not doing 30 a year, but I'm doing in that window of time, there's been 6 of them.
Hmm.
And none of them have had to have it. Okay. And
Yeah.
so I want you to think about the 3 or 4 or whatever many that was that you said you had, because I'll tell you right now, I know why mine haven't. I'm pretty sure I know why mine haven't. And it goes back to a video I watched about 4 or 5 years ago. Sarah Gad, you know that name? Mike Talmy, Sarah Gad.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've got a video. I bought it. It's a DVD series, but it's called Life of a Gun Dog, and it's great. They took 4 puppies out of the same litter, and they trained them, and they documented it. It's
Mm.
nine DVDs. I mean, it's a fucking ton of video. It's great, and I think I liked it for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that I picked up of it, one of many things that I picked up on it, and keep in mind, this is 5 years ago, Tim,
Yeah.
which is why I'm saying in 10 years from now, you're gonna watch some shit that's 30 years old. You're gonna go, I should have watched this 30 years ago, because
Yeah.
there's so
I
much out.
agree.
So I watched them, and I went back and I looked, because I thought, well, maybe it's like I watched there was versions of this in every one of these other pieces of content that I've really enjoyed and consumed. That Halstead videos. Dave Latham has a really nice series. Anyway, so I watched it. They did it, but they did it similar, but they never like emphasized it. It was Sarah that did it with these pups and Mike, that I saw every retrieve from 7 weeks on, 8 weeks on, every one of them. Now, part of it I do think is genetic, but I have seen this now with so many different dogs. I do think it is a genetic thing. But I think it's a genetic thing to the retrievers in general. They like
Mhm.
to carry stuff. They've done it forever. That's why we did this. That's why we had them doing what they do for hundreds of years now. They
I
like to
think
carry.
that's what I was trying to explain earlier, right? Just anyways, yeah.
Totally.
They love carrying
So
stuff.
so when they make retrieves, like when they're like, this video is just, it's a training video. So they're showing them in the training. They are so particular and so perfectionists in the idea of, when the dog brings it to me, I let them hold on to it. I bring them in, I settle them. It's never a race. It's never a hurry. It's never a rush. It's comfort. let
Mhm.
them let them enjoy it. You enjoy it with them. It's take it away and give it back. It's all these things. And I'm talking like from like mini puppy on, and it never changed. And so I watched them do it, and I thought, wow, these guys, how do these guys get they all get nice deliveries, and I've never seen any of them do like a whole conditioning. And
Yeah.
now I'm talking like these guys over in the UK. So, and maybe they do, and I'm just not seeing it. But what I saw was so consistent. They foster a dog's natural delivery from the beginning, and they never let that slip. And they correct it. If it's out of the mouth a little bit, they adjust it.
Mhm.
If they always center the dummies, they always let the dog take it and hold it. And just, I think that, so it becomes something that the dog never is allowed to get away with creating the problem in the first place. And I think to myself,
Now,
so I did this. I've done this with every one of them. And I have never made life so easy on myself when it comes to retrieving. Because
yeah.
if they're 3 months old, 12 weeks, if they're 16 weeks old, whatever it is, any point I run into it, it's just, okay, we fix it. We fix it. Instead of fixing it in 6, 8, 10, 12 months, whatever that time is, and having this bigger thing that I have to get on a table and shape. And it's like a big block of wood that's maybe a square, or it's a pre-shaped out gun stock. And I'm trying to finish this thing. The one that's going to
Mhm.
take me a lot less time and a lot less elbow grease is the one that's shaped out already, as opposed to the raw material. And
No doubt.
I think that I think it's partially that, and I think it's partially what the hell we put in their mouth. And I think, and so,
Exactly.
so I'm going to throw this at you because I don't care. I'm sure you use them. Everybody does. I know they're cost effective. They're cheap, but the wrong dummies in the dog mouths. I never see these dogs that are being taken from the very beginning. They're using like stuffed animals. Mike and Sarah use like those little stuffed animals, and then they go to puppy dummies, canvas, primarily canvas, because I think most of the stuff over there that they're using is canvas. But they're the right feel. They're super lightweight, and they allow for this dog to like. They encourage it, shape it, and allow for it with the tools that they're using to always be right. And by the time they get to like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever months it is, when they get into as they go along in their training, it just becomes their delivery because they
Yeah.
just don't know anything else. Now, I feel like the hard part for most people, you know how many people I've seen retrieve dummies, and this is not you. I've seen you do it. I've seen everybody do it.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever done it because it's a different type of a drill, but that I don't typically do. But you know how many times I've seen people bring dummies in, get it out of the dog's mouth and pitch it aside, line and sand. Like I understand the
Yeah.
objective is what the objective is. The objective there is not the delivery. The objective there is whatever it is, get them back to the same spot, whatever the drill is. But I see it happen. And one of the reasons I never do it is because when I used to take a dummy, I always put them in my bag because when I would take a dummy, if I threw it on the ground, immediately it made the next thing harder because the dog just saw me throw it to the ground and they instantly are drawn to it. And so I was always trying to like change their mind. I always had to redirect them off of that one to whatever it was.
Hmm.
So that's a personal thing why I always just put it away, out of sight, out of mind thing. But so I have seen bring it in, throw it aside, send another. Bring it. Now, the reason I reached out to you is because I asked you to send me a couple of your videos. You sent me a couple of videos because you did some. I love your series, your stories. I think you're really honest with your training. And that's what's drawn me to follow your stuff. You had some videos that I think they were talking about actually like maybe blinds versus it was color. The whole point of your message was
Yeah.
color differences in colors. Orange for things that are harder to see, and the color contrast with the white is easy to see. And you were running some drills that were totally unique to a purpose. But what I saw and why I reached out to you was every time the dog picked up our dummies, which we made you dummies. I reached out to you about the dummies. I said, hey, I think these are gonna be I think these are the best dummies. We guarantee them for life and all that stuff. But I just feel like the results are best, especially my little puppy one with no weight in it for my little puppies for shaping and all that shit.
Those
So
are great. Yeah.
so to me, those are like they're so powerful and they're so beneficial. But every time your dog retrieved it, it had it in the center of its mouth. It held it really
Yeah.
well. It had it carried really nicely. Now, I saw that, and then I saw there's a couple other people that we've made these dummies for, and they're using them. And I follow them too, and I watch and I go, look at how nice that delivery is. Guy named Tyler down at Mossy Oak. He sent a video of the puppy carry. He posted it. I just happened to see it, but he had a puppy
Hmm.
carrying one of our puppy dummies, and I was like, "This is the best video I've ever seen." The puppy was 7 months old, knew nothing, but just picked it up. Now it's genetic, nice breeding, but it also was part of that tool. That tool just made it so easy, and it made and I thought, so I'm watching all this stuff, and then I'm watching dummies get carried around like cigars, and I'm watching dogs with sloppy mouths, and I'm watching dogs drop shit and pick shit up and play with stuff. And I've seen it, and I can't help but now that I pay attention to it, realize the majority. It's not all the time. It's not like this dummy is bulletproof. This dummy doesn't make the dog carry it good. I wish it would, but it's not possible. But the majority of the issues that I see come from plastic, rubber, different shaped dummies. And I get it. Those launching things that you guys have that you use, they shoot those tubes or whatever.
They're terrible for retrieving,
Oh, I'm so
but
glad you
yes.
said that because I don't have them. I don't use them. But I
Yeah.
get the purpose of them. But I see dogs carrying them so shitty, and I go, it
Mhm.
can't be because it has to be because of the thing. Like it's like having them
Yeah,
pick up a
it
plastic
is.
pipe, basically, right? I mean, isn't that kind of what it is?
Correct.
So I
Yeah,
don't know because I don't have any experience with it, but I'm glad to hear you say that. But to me, I think I want to see what your thoughts are on this, but I don't know when the next puppy you have, and I'm not telling you to change anything you do because you find success the way you find it. I want I would be curious to see what you think about the next. Do it with just do it with one puppy.
yeah,
Don't don't expose them to like don't expose them to the other types of dummies that could create issues. And it's not just the dummy, but it's the supervision of it with it. But if you were to do it where you said, I'm going to use this type of dummy, I don't care if it's ours or someone else's, but that type of dummy, the dummy that feels real, the dummy that is weighted pretty properly.
properly, yeah, yeah.
And 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 then combine that with your shaping and making a point of going, I'm going to do it slower and I'm going to do it perfect every time. If you did it, I I would be curious to see if you had more end results similar to the dogs that you talked about before that you said, you know what, there was some that I just never had to do it with. And now I'm going to put it back into your court and say, tell me about the ones you never had to do it with. And is there any legitimacy to my hypothesis or theory?
No, you're exactly right, and I guess you kinda helped me understand that better because most of the dogs that I've never had to do hold conditioning with are gonna be my personal dogs or dogs that a client said, "Hey, call me when it's ready." So and I guess what I'm getting at is they're natural at carrying stuff around. There's never a point here's my rule of thumb, like, because I do believe there's a time, because 'cause they're labs, I'm talking or even Goldens, there's gonna be a time where they're gonna wanna chew on stuff, so you just need to
Yep.
take it away.
Totally.
Don't chase, don't say no, just take it away.
Yep.
Ignore that, take it away. Anyways, um, there's so many people think there's only one way to train a dog because of the certain videos out there, and but if I think back, this is kinda crazy, like, when, when people say, "Don't let the dogs have any toys," we're meaning don't let the dogs have a toy and chew on it and rip it and shred it and create habits with it. But if your dog has a teddy bear, this is a funny story, uh, that you brought up earlier, and I'm gonna help you understand where I kinda started making my job easier as well when it came to hold in and delivery. There was one client that has no clue how to train a dog. 0, but he has a dog that it's not a dog from us either. It's just been his pet, and the dog has a natural ability of wanting to retrieve and pick up, and it's just a really good dog. But that dog, if you go look at videos of that dog, like, in the house being a pet, he always has something in his mouth. If it's a teddy bear or one of his damn toys, he doesn't chew, and
Hmm.
he came out to my property to ask, he's like, "Man, I took him on a dove hunt, he did really well, but, he seemed a little afraid of the guns," and I'm like, "This is gonna be a freaking joke." Well, I got the dog used to the guns, and the dog has an issue with steadiness, that's it, but he will go out if it's 100 yards or 50 yards and pick up. If it feels like his teddy bear, he will not pick up a PVC bumper
Sure.
and bring it back and have the most perfect delivery. Like, "Here you go, bud," and hold it up and say, "You wanna take this?" Just by being natural.
Hmm.
And by and, I can't you kinda brought that up earlier. And this is coming from a guy that's never trained a dog, has no clue how to train a dog. His dog's naturally doing it.
Sure.
That's a really good point. But that takes some time, and
Oh, yeah.
they gotta be your personal dogs. Um, I mean, I have, I do see the struggle. One of the if I had You know the wingers, that the bungees, the wingers zingers. If I had 50 of those set up and I had a boy loading wingers for me every day, I would rather use wingers as remote launchers than any other type of equipment because I can put the correct bumper in and shoot it out, and the dog can retrieve it. The PVC bumpers is a huge struggle. That's probably more for a advanced working dog, a dog that understands the full aspect of retrieving and delivery. When you go to those style of bumpers,
Yep.
I will get a dog that has a great delivery with a. I have several right now that have great delivery with your bumpers, and I go out and I work the water with the remote launcher and terrible delivery with the PVC bumpers. They don't know how to hold them. They shake and it flies out of their mouth, and then they're like, "Oh shit, what do I do now?" All of that stuff.
Sure.
So
I mean, they're slippery. There's like simple things.
it's tough. The
Right.
tool is great because I can set up out there by myself and train
Yeah,
my
yeah.
dogs and do my own thing. Um, I guess I'm a very different trainer, so it's hard to even work with me as a trainer because I just see things differently and I want to do things every I'm training the dog that's out with me at the time, and each dog is different, so I don't have a certain method that I'm stuck to when it comes to running that line or going around multiple marks or running the blind retrieve. And so I just try to utilize as much tools as I can possible
Yeah.
to self train. But yeah, I wish there was a tool that launched good uh, canvas bumpers
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
could retrieve, and so
Yeah,
yeah.
and you use those. I don't own one of those things. Okay.
Hmm.
And you and a lot of people do. And they're good tools. They have, but what I so something you said makes sense to me too. I think going back to the idea of drills have to have purpose. There's intent behind
Yeah,
everything we do with our dog. We're trying to accomplish something. And so I feel like when you say, what my point to that would be is, like you said, I don't know that I would run a dog that is younger and not quite there as far as a good hold yet, a good delivery yet on that, because I feel like I'm setting them up. I might be accomplishing something, but I'm wearing and I'm degrading the idea of the delivery.
yes,
And my thought with it is and this is just this is this isn't a I'm not saying you have to do it this way, because I do think that there are totally different ways to accomplish the same results. I just know that for most people, and maybe this doesn't apply to you, but for most people, I would say their biggest heartburn with their dogs. And I work on my focus is on helping people train their own dogs, because I'm
yeah.
not interested in them sending their dogs to me. So I don't I want to try to help other people, but I think we as trainers do have a bit of a responsibility, because we people do look at us to go, well, how is he doing it, or what is he doing? And so I feel like to most people's struggles come with delivery and steadiness. Those are the two big things that always come up. They're always the
That's
heart.
the call I got before we got on the phone this morning.
Right,
The
right,
chocolate
exactly.
dog
Yeah,
that
exactly. They're always
steady,
the
and
issue. And so I
yeah, the
feel
dog's
like,
coming back with the duck and like throwing it around and like picking at the duck, and it's
yeah,
a 2-year-old dog,
right.
and that's something else. I mean, yeah, I'll accept the challenge, but we're gonna have to go back and clean up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you
But
said it
that's what
yourself.
I'm
The
getting
first
at.
thing we're going to do is foundation, because that's what everything is built on. And so,
We're gonna go,
looking at it and
yeah,
going, I'm looking at it and going, my philosophy changed when it comes to this conversation from get through whatever I got to get through in training, and then clean up that sloppiness on the delivery later on. That's always been my mindset. And it's always been harder for me, more work for me, I think, because I have a tendency to put stuff off that I don't enjoy, and I didn't enjoy that part of it. So
yeah, I don't
I'd
enjoy it
deal
either.
I'd
Yeah.
deal with a shitty retrieve. I'd deal with the shitty delivery
Yeah.
for a long enough until it finally,
Uh,
literally one of the last dogs I did it with was this dog named Bella. And I remember we filmed the whole thing, the whole series with her. And I remember finally looking at Ben after we shut the camera off. And I said, look, I've said it for 3 weeks now. I got to clean this up. I got to clean this up. That's it. We're done with this. I'm going to just hold
I
condition.
I have so many text messages. I have about 5 dogs that I have to clean up the whole delivery with, and that's the clients are like, "Man, the dog looks great," and I'm like, "Yes, the dog is amazing, but I have to clean up their delivery." That's a lot of that's a lot of operator error for me from just ignoring it and
Yeah,
knowing, I'll clean it up, and I mean,
and it
and
can
I
happen. I'm
do.
not saying it can't. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's wrong to do
No,
it.
but I would rather not have to. I would
Yes.
rather the dog be brought up properly. And
And you know what? The whole whether it's hold conditioning or force fetch, I don't care. Either one
Mhm.
is not the easiest. And it's the hardest thing for most people to do, I'm finding. I have a list of library members from our library that have these emails. I got one today. I got another one that I got to follow up with another guy. They've sent me, they can't get through hold conditioning. They're just struggling. They're doing it for months and months and months and they can't get past it and they're struggling. I said, you
Yeah.
guys send me a video because I have no idea what's going on here. And the honest thing about it is the reason I want to have these conversations is because I need to do a better job of explaining to people if you don't mess it up in the first place, your life is a whole lot easier and you won't have to fix a lot of that stuff. And so I have not done a good job of that. I lived by this mentality of I'll fix it later. And I show a lot of it. I try to show it as best I can. But you've hold conditioned a lot of dogs. No two are the exact same. And it is a pain in the ass. And we're supposed to be good at it.
Yeah,
But
I'm
now,
just crossing my fingers that these ones that are struggling, because I know they've shown delivery signs, or I wouldn't be out there working with them, that it'd just kinda get out of their head and they'll start delivering the bumper to me properly. But they're struggling, and I
yeah,
need to get them to hold conditioning, but I'm
yeah,
hoping they would just figure it out, but
yeah.
it's not getting there.
No,
I'm
I
hoping the
think
more and more we do the job, the more retrieves we get, clean retrieves, you're holding the bumper properly. It's just when you're getting to me, you're either spitting it out or you're running circles around me, or, um I go to grab it and you drop it. And I'm
right.
like, "Why are we doing this? I
So
thought we
here's
had this figured out."
here's my thought with that. This is where I go, if you take that stuff, those symptoms, and you go back in time. If we could be at Marty McFly, jump in the machine and go back. I mean, you might be
Mhm.
too young for that. That's Back to the Future joke.
No, no, yeah, no,
So
it's no,
back to the
believe me.
future. We could go back and look at it and go, okay, when they're making those retrieves, and again, I want to be very careful and say I am not saying how to do something, but
No,
if
you're good,
if
man.
if if they come in and they're doing that, I'm looking at that. Me personally, I'm looking at that and going, I'm not doing these retrieves anymore. I'm not doing these. I'm not shooting these dummies with the things that they're struggling with. Instead, I'm going to, and when it happens, I'm fixing every one of them in that moment. Like, but if you took that and you went back and did it when they were little and did it
Yeah.
from the beginning, by the time you get to there, when it's more advanced and it's more formal and it's more like you're working on other stuff, that symptom
Here
shouldn't be there. That's my
well,
thought.
yeah. The real life problem that most people are gonna have if you're a trainer is you don't have the time because the client wants to see the dog out there just being a badass, picking up, doing the whole gun dog side of it, retrieving, working. They don't wanna see the dog sitting and just bringing a bumper back delivering. Um, some of them are not
I
patient.
get I
I
get
don't really
that, but I
don't
want to
have
but
the
I'll
I don't
rewind
have
this
those
video and I'll
clients.
show you like you told me already like that's
Yeah.
not that's the difference
I'm
between you and the rest of the
Yeah,
world.
that's right. I'm speaking for other people.
I don't
Myself,
give a shit about them. Like that
yeah, yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
because I know this won't work. I know this conversation won't work with nine
Yeah.
out of 10 professional trainers.
We will
They're gonna say, I don't have time.
gladly bring a puppy up with the correct bumper from day 1 till finish. There's no doubt in my mind that because I can relate to this from my personal dog, there's no doubt in my mind that it will have a clean delivery. We won't even have to do hold conditioning at all. There will be no hold conditioning involved.
I think so.
So
That's what I've seen. And I
I agree with you. It will work.
what I
Yeah.
want who I want to hear this because I'd love to hear, I'd love for professional trainers to listen to this and be like, man, that makes a lot of sense. I get it if they say, I don't have time for it. I get it. I'm
Mhm.
not saying, I'm not trying to tell them how they should run their business. And they're right. Most of them, if they didn't, if they had 3 month windows that they guaranteed stuff in, they wouldn't have time for this. They couldn't do this. I get that.
Yeah.
But what I feel is the majority of the people that are listening to this, that will listen to this, that I need to talk more about too, are people that are the ones who are sending me the pictures and videos of their dogs that they're training themselves that are having the hard time. And the reason is because they watched a lot of my stuff from 10 years ago when I accepted and was okay with the idea of some of the sloppy delivery stuff. And then I fixed it later with hold conditioning. And now what they're doing
Yeah.
is they're just following that same path. And I can't, I'm not going to go back and erase all the stuff I've done. And
So
what I need to do is a
y-
better job of going, I think I've gotten better. And here's how I've
yeah.
done it.
And you can make it if you're force fetching or doing hold conditioning, it doesn't matter. Anytime you put the dog up in front of you on a stand, you will make or break that dog if you're not careful. If you make mistakes, and it's gonna set you way back. You're gonna think, like you said, you'll be 3 months in and you're still trying to teach the dog to hold because you did not read the dog properly and you made
Sure.
mistakes
And
by,
that's not the
you
easiest thing
know.
to do. It's not the easiest process. Like
No, it's not.
the reason I like
And
hold.
most people are gonna get a temper with it, and the
Oh,
dog's gonna
totally.
sense the temper before it even comes out. Before you even make a different face, the dog already knows you're pissed. You know,
Which
your blood pressure's rising, the dog's like, "Dad's not happy,"
right.
and they're not gonna do it properly.
Which is
So,
why I think hold, I that's part of the reason why I think going through a hold conditioning as opposed to a more traditional force fetch. One of the reasons I'm a believer in it is because I just think the risk is a lot less. Like I think you're not
it
gonna
is.
you're not going to create you are less likely to create bigger problems because I and that's again I don't want to go into that, but to me, so that is part of it. But I'm getting on this, idea of if I do a better job of talking through this and sharing it and getting your feet. I wanted to hear what you thought about it because
You
maybe I'm nuts, but I feel like if we did a better job of giving people the information of don't let it become the issue in the first place and don't use things that don't make it likely for your dog to succeed, the dummies.
Yeah,
You use the right dummies and you don't allow them to fuck it up, you're going to have a really good chance of success. And if you do have to do some type of formal hold, it's probably a lot less work than it would have
exactly.
if not.
Then trying to make it a part of the routine training, like,
Yeah,
th
yeah.
I mean, I will be the first to admit that there has been dogs that we've sent home as a baby to a client, bred here, and a lot of it's genetics like we spoke about, but I gave them a simple program about encourage the dog when it's carrying stuff, don't get onto it. That's what I was
Yeah.
trying to get at with, don't beat the
Yeah,
dog with the shoe.
totally.
Um, we've had dogs come back for our clients did a great job training them. They just needed help with some foundational retrieving side of it, or I don't know, just different things. But those dogs come back with very clean deliveries. And again, they have no clue how to do holding.
Right.
They don't have a hold conditioning program. They just let the dog be natural and carry stuff around and reward it properly
Yeah, I think it's
when it was delivered,
I think
encouraging the dog.
encouraging and shaping. Encouraging and
Yeah.
shaping are the two like best ways I feel like there are to describe it. Encourage that dog to hold it and carry it and shape it to be
Yeah.
exactly what you want. And 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 I do think that, another level of depth with it is I think, if there's one thing people could do better, it's slow down. It's it
That's what I was fixing to say, because you can't, if you don't have the patience and you don't slow down and you give the dog time, it's not gonna work. There's no way it's gonna work. And I mean, in like, there's so many different ways to look at this, because I think I can see myself as training multiple styles of dogs. I just don't believe in any force methods of how that works, or e-collar methods. But I think, like, if I'm out if I'm out in a field, I mean, you and I probably hunt a little different as well. I mean, and a lot of our clients hunt different, meaning like there may be a time where there's freaking 20 guns in a blind, and we have a couple of dogs and we're shooting 100 birds. I don't know. So there's a lot going on, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And at that time, and I guess that's why there's a lot of what you've seen, like taking the bird, turning and going, picking up, cleaning up the mess and all of that stuff. Like in the training field, taking the dummy away, tossing it to the side, lining up and resending. I train all different styles of hunting to how I hunt. If I'm walking a field shooting upland birds, it's a lot slower. It's more it's if I'm sitting in the timber with like 3 or 4 guys, it's a lot slower, laid back, shooting ducks, having fun. But if we're out on a maybe with some guides or we're sending dogs with some guides and there's 15, 20 people in a blind, it's a way different side of stuff. And the dog has to be able to handle delivery, not shopping. So what I want to run into when we start training those methods is how do we fix multiple birds down, getting past the old fall, getting that bumper back to you, and then turning around and going back and repicking up.
Yeah.
It's first thing is you cannot rush the dog. You cannot send a puppy out there to do that. They don't understand that yet. You have to build a dog up for that. So, but I think that's going to be, you know, one of my it is one of my biggest struggles um when I'm trying to slowly bring a dog up in hold conditioning or just delivery.
Yeah.
Um
No, and
is I guess is what I'm getting at. So
I get it, and I get what you're saying, and I think there's 2 ways to interpret when I say slow down.
mhm.
I mean it in the literal sense of, like, slowing it down, and I know what you're saying is, "Hey, man, I gotta get in, we gotta turn around, we gotta send him back." I get that. I feel like in that scenario, my response to that would be when appropriate, absolutely, and
When the dog's age, yeah.
when appropriate would be when I have a dog that has an absolute perfect delivery, then I'll let them
Yeah.
come in fast, I'll take it from them perfectly and send them back, where that younger one that I'm trying to make sure doesn't get a sloppy mouth, that one I don't rush. That one I can't speed up that drill. I can't go fast. I gotta go
Yeah.
slow until it's perfect, and then I'll speed up, and then I'll speed up, and then I'll speed up as long as they don't take steps back as far as the performance. So that's like
Yep.
to me, that's the slow down in the moment. And then the bigger picture of slow down is, being patient and like taking it in time, which is an extension of that might have to happen over weeks, months of
Yeah, I mean, this may be a 1-year-old dog we're talking about that's been doing it for a while. It takes so much time.
right, right.
I don't believe, and I sit here and I talk like this like I'm talking against myself, but some stuff, I can't keep a person's dog for 3 years sometimes.
Yep.
If I
No, I
could, I
agree.
would, um, but yeah, if you call and say, "I want a dog like yours, Tim. I want a dog like, let's say Mila or one of my personal dogs," well, I'll call you when it's ready because it took a lot of time to get those dogs where they're at.
Totally.
It's simple as that.
And that and
So,
and that hits on my point. Like, I think that's where I go. That is exactly where I go. The article or the column that I was going to write called
yeah,
"Be Unprofessional" is not a dig on professionals. And that's where I'll
yeah,
have to be very careful because I want to make that crystal clear. There's a difference in the approach and the constraints of time that come from being a professional versus training your own dog. And I feel like the my this conversation is not to, like, maybe it will help a professional trainer. I think there's value in this. I think there's something they could
no,
take.
there's a lot of
They
value in
just
it.
can't
That's why I'm
apply
trying
it
to be as
necessarily apples to apples.
honest. Yeah,
But the
yeah.
average person 100% I think can gain from the idea of listening to 2 quote unquote professionals talk about doing it in a way that I don't do it in a professional way. Like, my dogs
Yeah,
are what you're saying. They're with me for as long as it takes, but that's not how I pay my bills. Training a dog for
yeah,
me is what keeps my sanity. Like
Mhm.
I pay my bills with products that come out of a shop in a warehouse and
Yeah.
get shipped to stores and shipped to people through the website. That's not my business. What makes that happen is because I love training a dog. And so my 1, 2, 3 dogs a year are how I practice that skill and trade and also stay excited about it, stay in love with
Yeah.
it.
We
And so,
we've been blessed with a lot of good clients that trust us, and I hope it always stays that way, and that's how we, that's who we are today is because we are able to train our dogs and bring
totally.
them up how we should see them. There is that 10% that's not my dogs that I got at an older age
Dude, you're
that
changing those
still
dogs'
turn out
lives.
to.
You are ch
Yeah,
you that's that scenario that you just described is what I would relate to a workshop where someone comes,
yeah,
they're followers of ours or whatever, and they come and they bring their dog, and their dog's a year old, 2 year old, whatever it is.
yeah.
We change in 3 days, we change that person's direction in life because of just understanding philosophies of how to
Correct.
treat a
That's what
dog,
I'm getting at.
and
Yeah.
that's what you're doing. So don't absolutely I feel like it's so refreshing to have you tell me what you do and how you do it. I didn't know any of this stuff, which is part of why I
Yeah.
wanted to, but it's refreshing to hear because I love the idea of it, of what you're doing.
Mhm.
You're really positively affecting people that don't have your breedings in when those touches happen, but you're also doing it in a way that I think as far as a professional, it's the only way that would make sense, I think. Now, I'm not saying the other way is wrong, but
No, 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 you're exactly right. We're not don't wanna offend nobody, and I got to the point in my career that it's not that I don't care what people think anymore, but there were times I can remember they were like, "Dude, you're never gonna be able to make it if you're not competing in these hunt tests or you're not force fetching, or why would you wanna go out there and chase a dog around, and not just have an e-collar on it and shock it till it comes back," and all of this stuff, and it just those people, they just don't understand my way of thinking how I like to train
sure,
dogs. And
sure.
and me training dogs is something not every day I love it because it is a job. It is a very tough job and you have to really know a dog. But it is something I'm very passionate about and I
Yeah,
love
for
the
sure.
end result, man. Like the end result of this game is so cool to me. And just and in general, I love dogs.
Yeah,
I've just that's been my whole life. So if you're bringing me we have a couple of tracking dogs. They're super cool to work with. I mean, I love the personality of all the dogs. I don't like a disobedient dog. I cannot stand a dog that doesn't have manners.
yeah,
That's why we do what we do. And
right,
we change people's lives. So
right,
if they
right.
want a dog in the house,
Totally. No, I
but
get it, man. Well, I've tied you up and I appreciate your time that you've given me here because I I find a lot of value in hearing what there's a lot of value in what you've said. And I think
yeah,
that it's important for me to understand it from your perspective because we have different businesses and we live different lives and but we also do things a lot in a lot of ways we do things very similar and we're kind of moving in the same direction with a lot of this stuff too. And I wanted to validate or maybe discredit some of my thoughts when it comes to these processes and hearing some of your feedback validates a lot of it and
yeah.
I value that. And so but I also I'm going to throw it out there at you and be like I'd like to stay in touch with you on it and hear what your thoughts are and see if it's something that you would be able to tell because I don't know. In the end it could be like a it may add length to the overall. It may
I
shorten
don't
it.
think
It
so.
may it may not change it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I know that what I think I'm trying to figure out is how to figure out how to help people how to help increase the success that people are having with their dogs. And I think one of the ways that that can happen is by me being better at sharing a message that more people can relate to and apply. Like not everybody
Yeah.
can do hold conditioning, unfortunately. I know that, and I got to do a good. And I got a lot of work cut. Like I don't want to have to send as many messages to people and do as many phone calls and do as many share videos of people that are struggling to do what I think is pretty easy. But who am I to say it's easy? I've been doing it for 25 years. I
There
can't.
you go.
I'm an
Yeah.
idiot to
That's
say
right.
this. How do you not know this? Like that's a that's a
Yeah.
that's a frustrated Jeremy talking when he says that. So I don't want to do that. And so what I need to do is I think I can help people. I think I can help more people if I give them better information. And I think my information that I thought was the best information has changed in
Well,
over time.
we have two litters coming up, and I think they'll be back to back. And we plan on keeping several of those dogs back for us. That's the other side. I mean, we'll keep these dogs back, and in a couple of years, I'll put them up for sale. I haven't been able to lately because not having enough dogs. Client calls, say, "Hey, I need a puppy," and then we get them on a training contract. It still works out the same way.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is, we will bring up some dogs. We're expecting puppies, I think, in about 3 weeks, and we'll bring up some dogs and never do any type of hold conditioning with the ones I bring up in the kennel,
See what you think.
and we'll talk about it.
See what you think. Yeah,
So,
I'd love to. I'm gonna have well, I don't know for sure, but I think I have a dog bred. I'll find out Monday, but if she
mhm,
is, she'll be due the 20th of March. And so, and again, the breeding I think is really good. And but I'm gonna do the same thing. And I've done it now for
yeah,
the last couple of years. And knock on wood, it hasn't bit me in the ass quite yet. And I think that it's it's also one of those things where when I try something new, that's relatively new. I tried it new, and it's because I was influenced by watching some other people that were doing it and have been doing it forever. And now I feel like it's consistently shown me, damn, I really like that. I really prefer that. I think this is a better fit for a lot of people. And so only now do I feel comfortable really talking about it because
yeah.
you gotta really believe in it. And I really believe in it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with hold
And
conditioning. That is a good fix. That's a good fix for problems. But I feel like,
uh,
boy, I'd like to avoid the
and
problem.
it might just need to be a fix, though. You don't not necessarily have to be part of your training routine
Right.
or your methods.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree
So
100%. And I also think, and I'm not just saying this to promote your bumpers. I mean, we have been using canvas bumpers for a long time.
sure.
Those are the best tools with retrieving because of they hold scent well,
Yep.
and they're just the more realistic for the
Yeah.
dog to put in their mouth. It's nothing to mess with the dog's gums or bite or anything like that. So we try to promote those bumpers to every single client. Like the bumpers I purchased from you, I just gave them to every one of my clients. I just gave them to them for free because that's what I want them to bring their dog back
Right.
retrieving
It's gonna help you
and
in
working with.
reality.
Yeah, I,
That
I
cost
have a
helps you,
trailer.
hopefully.
Yeah, that's right. And I have a trailer full of rubber bumpers and all of it. I haven't touched them in a long time. Like
Well,
I just
I
don't.
I appreciate that, and I can mirror that. I used to use a lot of canvas dummies, but the canvas dummies fall apart, and they're cheap
Yeah,
too. Well, they're all made in China, and I'm not gonna get into that,
yeah,
but that they fall apart, their weight comes out, the sand comes out of them, the seams break open, but you throw them away and you get another one. This is where I have changed as I've gotten older too, and I've realized I would rather buy something that is good when I use it that often than just
yes.
we're a throwaway society, and I get it. There are certain things I buy and throw away too. But I
No.
also really appreciate things that are old and still work. And that's something that is, personally from a business standpoint, we feel pretty strongly about that. And that's why we do the guarantee on them. Like if there's ever a failure on them, we're going to send them a free one. We're going to send the person another one, no
Well,
questions asked. And you just can't, you don't, and I don't think they're terribly expensive, like there's way more expensive dummies out there that I don't think functionally are as good. And so I do believe that it helps. And I will never I would never sign
It's not expensive when you purchase it once. You know,
exactly.
that's the thing, man.
Exactly.
When we started this conversation, I told you I went out and I bought the best of everything to run my kennel. I have friends to this days that have been operating kennels for 5, 6 years, and they're like, "Man, I'm on my second run of kennels. You know, my dogs piss on
Right.
them, they rust out, blah blah blah." I'm like, "Dude, my kennels are 10 years old and they look brand new.
Right. Right.
We
Yeah.
bought them one time."
Right. Right. And I get
It's
it.
the
Not
same way with the bumpers. You
can't
buy
always
them
do
one
that, but
time.
there's certain things that to me are important that way. And that's where, so I do appreciate you saying that. I feel like,
Yeah,
I got one that I'm going to end up sending you. There's another one that we're making. So back to the canvas. Like I loved canvas dummies. I used to use them,
yeah.
but they would always break down on me. Well, we have a dummy. I haven't sent you them yet, but I'll send you one, but it's actually duck canvas material. It's a variation of what we're doing with the fire hose. The fire hose is so durable.
Yep.
It's going to last forever. And when we
Yeah, I
don't,
was gonna let you talk about your dummy because
yeah, and
when we go to the fire hose stuff,
I'm not good
it's a
at
game changer, man.
I appreciate
So
that, and I don't want this to turn into someone going, oh, they're just trying to sell product. I If
no,
you know me
it's the
long enough,
truth.
you'll know I'm the worst. I'm not very good at that, and so, but
Yeah,
I'm going to send you one that I made, and so the reason I made it is holding a bird, like holding a training bird. When you hold a training bird, pigeons and whatever, and I started doing a lot more pigeon stuff in the last couple of years with this little setter of mine. But when you hold these birds, they have a distinct, there's a feel to a bird. You feel the breastbone on them. Well, I have these dummies that we were experimenting with. We went and talked with this company that's really good at sewing stuff, and they were helping me trying to figure out cost-effective ways to manufacture them because we're doing it. We bought the machines and we're doing them in house. And so we make this one, and it's not available yet, but it will be. I think we're launching, I think like in April, but it's actually a duck canvas. It's a number 4 duck canvas, which is a really heavy canvas. And it's actually called duck canvas. That's the material. But it's sewn with a seam on the side. And
hmm
so when you hold it, if you closed your eyes and you held a bird and you hold the dummy, if you hold the seam where you hold the bird in your hand, it feels like it's identical. It actually
like the
feels like,
breastplate.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it just feels so realistic. Now, is that necessary? I think any advantage I can get to be closer to the real thing is good without going to the real thing. And I have some dog. I'm really cautious about taking dogs to real birds because I don't want them to lose enthusiasm for dummies because it's a pain in my ass if I have to always use birds to get them excited. So that's another
yeah,
rabbit hole. But I feel like getting as close as I can with dogs is important. And so this is I'll send you a couple because I've been using them. And we've had some people maybe will see them in some of our videos, but Noah has had them for a couple of guys. I've sent them to a couple of guys last year, so I'll send you a couple. But see what you
yeah,
think of those. Weight is the same, size is very similar, design is similar, but just we made that one little change to it, and I think it's an advantage. I still love the durability of that fire hose material, but I use them. I mean, my bag's full of them right now. So, but I'll get you a couple and see what you think. But
yeah, man. That's great. And uh, man, this was awesome. I really think I got a lot from it as well myself.
I hope
Um,
so. I I hope so, man. And I
just hearing myself talk helps me sometimes.
totally,
Just you know what I mean.
totally, man. You're
But
gonna. I'm telling you right now. I don't want to sound like that guy because I'm getting to be that guy. Like I don't want to be the old guy. But I also
yeah,
realize there's so many times that people have told me stuff over the years
I
that
mean, just
they had more experience than me. They knew more. They're older, they knew more, they saw more. And
yeah.
I listened to it and I heard it, but I didn't hear it. I heard it, but I didn't hear it.
You're exactly right. And
And
I had, I learned really early in the world, man. I mean, a true thing about me, I didn't even complete high school. I went to work. I was like 15 when I went to work. I was working and I had a
my
job,
grandpa.
and
You're like a
it,
you're born in the wrong era.
that, that's the thing. And like, I mean, I had a real job and I was running a landscape crew. I had all kinds of stuff. And the guy would make me take care of his dogs. He had Chesapeake retrievers. I'd have to get in the kennel and hopefully I didn't get bit that day. I mean, there was just stuff
Sure.
like I learned growing up and that I always think back to. So I can think back to generations and decades of stuff in the working world coming up and just trying to accomplish something. And I just put that into my skill set of dog training and look at it no differently.
Right.
I
I
am
just
not like I will learn from every person. I just don't seek out knowledge, I think, until it's needed. And I may struggle right there. Like I probably need to do better research and understand.
It'll come.
But I
Don't force
always
it. Don't force it.
yeah,
It'll come.
yeah.
I if there's one thing I have learned, it's that I just don't know very much stuff, and I have so
Yeah.
much more stuff to learn. And that is
No, there's
that
no
that
doubt.
never that
Yeah.
I didn't realize it until pretty recently. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that can be said about lots of things in life, not just
Anything.
dogs.
Yeah, that's life in general, man. And if you see it that way, you're good. If you know
I
it all, that's why I tell you I hire kids that really have no clue how to train a dog. They just need to have a passion for it.
sure.
And I've built some of the best young men in this industry for training and handling dogs that I've just been completely happy with. And I can
Yeah,
call them, they may have a different profession right now, but they are very knowledgeable in working dogs.
totally.
And it just felt good. So,
Absolutely.
but
Well, I appreciate this, man. I'll circle back with you on a few things, those dummies and that. But thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And let's I would like to stay in touch because I'll be curious. Um, I mean, this is we've known each other, I would say, for quite a while.
yeah,
I don't remember when it was that we talked. It was a couple of years ago. But this is the first time we've really talked, I think, and um I enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. So
yeah.
I'll talk with Ben and we'll figure out what we're gonna do as far as the content part of it. But thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Let's talk soon.
Sounds good,
Keep
buddy.
up.
Take care.